Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Common Tongue Podcasts. Today, we're doing our show for nostalgia's sake, and I'm really excited about this one because we get to talk to Jamieson, who is a member of the cast of the DNR podcast, but he also owns his own comic book company, which is really cool. He's self-published. Go check him out, by the way, on that. But today, we're talking all things American comics. We're talking Marvel, DC, stuff that happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where we thought things were going to go based on our knowledge of the comics. I certainly had certain things that I was expecting, but because of, licensing and different things, I didn't fully think it through. And we get into that. So it's a lot of fun. So hopefully, buckle up, because we're about to get into some major comic stuff. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another mediocre attempt at a podcast here at the Common Tongue Podcasts. I totally nailed that. I have a return guest. You may recognize him from the last episode. This man, please, one of the greatest nerds on this planet. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am a mediocre nerd, I would say myself. My name is Jamieson, and I think we're here to, well, I won't say it, you say it, it's your hosting.
No, we're talking about comics.
That's right.
So this is really interesting, though, because so when this goes up, it'll be 2 weeks ago. Mandy Miyahira, she and I talked about Asian comics.
Mm-hmm.
So manga, manhwa from respectively Japan, Korea, and China.
Okay.
So we talked about all three of those, and now we get to talk about American comics.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm actually really excited for this. So what is your experience with comics? So when did you start reading comics, and what was the appeal towards it?
Okay, so as succinctly as I can put it, without going too wild, I had comics as a kid. All kids had some comics as a kid. I feel, at least in the early 90s, kind of was when I started to grow up to be of a reading age. But the first time I bought comics myself, or at least got comics given to me that I was really into, probably around 93, 94.
Okay.
And I don't know how old you are or when you started reading comics at all, but
I'm 26 in a week.
26. Okay, so this is a little bit before you. Anybody who read comics at that point, pretty much, at least everybody I knew, it was X-Men. That was the book that got everybody hooked. That was
okay.
The beginning of the Jim Lee era. Any time from the late 80s all the way up until pretty much when the first movies came out in 2000s. If you got into comics, you were at least a little bit into X-Men. It was either X-Men or Batman,
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, me and my friends, everybody in my class and school, it was just all the boys were just reading X-Men constantly, drawing X-Men, talking about X-Men. The trading cards were big. I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're not as popular anymore.
Oh, really? They have trading cards?
Trading cards? Oh my God. Yeah. I found a box of them a couple months ago in my parents' garage. Just these 1994 Fleer Ultra X-Men trading cards.
I hope you're sleeving those.
Oh, actually, I've been looking at what the binders I used to have are gone. I don't know what happened to those. I think my brother sold them. But there was a box of duplicates and spares, and there's an unopened pack, which I don't know what that's worth. Probably nothing. But
okay, hold on. No, this is what we're here for. So
okay,
we're gonna do a Common Tongue fact check. So, okay, so X-Men trading cards game.
It's not even a game. It was just straight up trading cards. So we're talking 1994 X-Men trading cards.
I'm saying 1992. Or at least that's when they came out. Oh, those are the ones that are probably really popular.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the ones. So it's I'm looking at it right here, and there's a background color and then a stripe going around the border of the picture and down the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that
was one of the ones. Yeah. So the sealed packs, I'm looking for the exact pack that I have. It had Gambit on it. I mean, obviously I had more, but that's the unopened pack I still have.
Right.
Uh,
Oh, no, I see the 1994 ones. Okay. So the 1995 ones are really interesting because those are a gold with red on the bottom.
okay, yeah. That was one of my
X-Men
favorite sets. Yeah.
Marvel Chromium.
Oh yeah. It was.
Is
I
that
mean, so
the
the mid-90s is all those gimmicks, right? Not just with the
yeah.
cards, but with the comics. You've got Chromium. You've got, die cat, like cutaway, multiple layers,
Uh-huh.
and the 9 card set that all assemble into one big image and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
all the gimmicks.
I forgot about those.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I had all of those.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. I haven't. Okay, so I'll tell you this. One of my very first memories. I have 2 very distinct memories from as a child.
Okay.
And people are probably not going to believe me about this. But so one of them was as a kid, we had an apartment and I can still remember the layout of the apartment. This was in Idaho.
Mhm.
And I was watching on a TV Pokemon when it was coming out.
Okay.
So this must have been 1998.
Thereabouts.
I
Yeah.
think.
That sounds about right.
But I remember watching that anime as a kid, and I must have been 3 or 4 around there. And the other memory that I have is me dropping a jar of pickles in the living room.
Well, I'm sure those are related somehow.
Yeah, no, I guarantee it. Pickles and anime, obviously that's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
connection of how I became this person, obviously.
It all adds up.
Man. So what was the appeal? Was it just like the superhero aspect of it, or
I mean, you know what? I'm not sure. So when you get into something with a friend group, when you're in like that age, like 9, 10, 11, and everybody's suddenly into it, if it's skateboarding, if it's comic books, if it's video games or whatever it is, it's just kind of this thing that just takes over, and it's all you and your friends talk about, and it's all you look at or think about, or at least it was for me. I know that like as we got older, most of my friends kind of drifted away from comics. And I did not. I don't know what it was. Like I just kept. I stopped reading for a little while, but it was more just because of money than anything. Like you get into high school and into college, and that expendable income kind of goes away.
Right. Yeah.
So you kind of fall away from it, but. Yeah, so like it was just X-Men when I was a kid. It was just X-Men. Something about it was just so cool. Like that was when they had all those the classic uniforms that most people think of when they think of the X-Men.
The
yellow
yellow
cartoon
on blue
was really strong. The cartoon was probably a big factor of it. Now that I think about it, the one that was on in the mid-90s.
I know which one you're talking about. I can see the characters how they're drawn in my
exactly.
head.
Yeah, it had the rad intro theme, best cartoon theme ever done. So for me, it was just X-Men. And then as I got a little bit older into like middle school and high school, I started to, I thought I was expanding my repertoire into more just Marvel comics, like the Avengers and Thor was a favorite character of mine, stuff like that. And it wasn't until I got into college that I started actually expanding beyond just Marvel into like other comics, not just even just beyond superhero stuff, into just other forms of fiction. That's when I kind of realized that comics aren't a genre, they're a medium, and you can do any genre from within comics. And that was like, and then the options just multiply, right? Everything you could possibly read, you can read in comic form.
I think so that happened with me, but in terms of anime or in terms of Asian comics. So I had an app called Manga Rock, and that thing was revolutionary. I was a kid. I didn't know anything about it. The first thing that was introduced to me was Naruto, and D Gray Man. I don't know if you're familiar with either of those.
I know of Naruto, but I don't know the other one.
Okay. And then I found that the internet was capable of holding so much more than what my friends could buy at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the deciding factor. It's like, oh, this is some cool stuff. I need to start reading this. I didn't find good comics probably until 2015.
Okay.
Which is crazy. But, up until this point, I had been playing video games. I'd been obsessed with Square Enix up to this point. I'd been reading, manga and stuff like that from Japan. And strangely enough, I was really big into Saturday cartoons.
Okay.
So Shaman King, Dragon Ball Z, Kirby era, or Kirby. I don't remember what the cartoon was called.
The Kirby cartoon? Yeah, I only saw it a little bit. I know what you're referring to. Though. Yeah.
And then Sonic, the Sonic cartoon that was really, really popular.
It was voiced by Urkel. I forget the actor's name.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Jaleel White.
I'm not familiar on...
That's his name, yeah.
Well, let's find out real quick. Sonic cartoon.
Again, this is me being roughly 10 years older than you, referencing things like Urkel.
Voice actors. Oh, yeah, that's... Oh, he's off The Office.
But he was in The Office?
Ben Schwartz. Or wait, no, this is the new one.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, hang on.
Yeah, no, I'm...
Yeah, so I'm referring to the one that started in 93 and 94. That was the one that was voiced by Jaleel White. So if you're referring to a later one, that probably passed me by.
I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember. I feel like it had some weird name that I'm not remembering.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was one of the comics, or one of the shows that I watched. And then I never got into like Justice League or Young Justice or anything like that for some reason. I never, ever got into those. So my first interaction with comics was actually the Superior Spider-Man.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a definite moment in history. Okay.
Okay. So here's the thing. That was the defining moment for me for Marvel in terms of comic book heroes. I knew that the multiverse existed. You know, there's the Amazing Spider-Man, and then all these other, I guess, offshoots that happened. The multiverse theory, you know.
Sure.
But then somebody recommended to me on my mission. I was probably 2 weeks into my mission, and we started talking about some subject, and one of the girls who was there, she actually said, "Oh, you have to read Superior Spider-Man. It's the best comic I've ever read," because she was super big into comics.
Okay.
So I came home, and that was the first thing I did. She got off her mission earlier than I did, so she had emailed me, EPUB versions of Volume 1. And so I went and read that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to go find more." And I think I read 3 volumes of Superior Spider-Man in Barnes and Noble the next day.
Yeah,
because it's so unbelievably good. When
what about that specific hook got you though? Because I mean, I'm sure you were at least somewhat familiar with Spider-Man before that, right?
So for me, it was just the idea that it felt like a really good redemption story in an atypical way.
Okay. Yeah.
So in my head, this was the story. Doc Ock, he's still bad. He's still trying to come up with these schemes. He takes over Peter Parker's body, right? Also, major spoilers ahead for Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah, from 6 years ago.
Yeah, in case you guys are wondering.
Yeah.
But so, there was a moment there where it's changed for him, right? Where he was like, "Oh no, I'm going to be better than Peter Parker. I'm going to become a better Peter Parker than he ever could have been." And then throughout the rest of the series, you see him trying to basically just become this person who he's not, but he's still trying to do good. And it was really interesting to me, though, like the way that they took the story for it.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't reading that directly, but I was reading Avengers at the time. It was the beginning of Hickman's run, Jonathan Hickman, and Spider-Man was in that book. And it was because they at least put some effort into crossing the books over, at least having them line up. It was Doc Ock version of Spider-Man.
Right.
But they didn't have the time to get into it or explain it. They just had everybody's like, "Why is Peter being such a jerk?" Like, he would just come in and be grumpy and like sass people and then walk out. And like there was literally a scene in one of the Avengers comics where he just like eats somebody's lunch out of the fridge and walks away. And it was like, what a jerk. Who invited this guy?
It's so good. Oh, man. Doc Ock Peter Parker oh, man. Imagine your dad in your current body.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
like a Freaky Friday,
yeah.
times 10 for sure.
But the only difference is that, you can see everything that they're doing in your body.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was kind of trapped in there the whole time.
Yeah, it was
I forgot
super.
about that.
It's
Yeah.
that was what really sold comics for me. Is the art style in Superior Spider-Man is just so good. It's so gritty and so dark.
Yeah.
Which you only expect that from Spider-Man 3 with the whole Venom arc.
Yeah, which is touchy for some people as an example. But that's the thing though, is with a character that's been done to death over decades and decades like Spider-Man, the idea that there's still something new you can do with it, right? Like that's huge. That's a big part of the appeal for me, is like you can bring in a new writer and a new artist and they can do things with an old character that nobody ever thought of, and change the way that you think about them. People are still doing that with characters who've been around 80 years now.
That's true. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it has been 80 years for some of them.
Yeah.
So I'll have to show you this after. But so I have something here that's probably the coolest thing in my opinion. Okay.
Wow, okay.
In terms of comic book nerdness.
All right.
Are you familiar with Teen Titans?
Yes. I have a 7-year-old who is a big Teen Titans Go fan. So we've had to expand into all kinds of Teen Titans stuff from there.
So have you watched the cartoon then from the 2000s?
That preceded Teen Titans Go? I've seen a little bit of it. But I've apparently come down on the wrong side of the nerd wars regarding that change in the cartoons, because I like the new version. But yeah, I've seen a little bit of the old one.
So are you familiar with who drew the comics? The original comics?
Was it George Perez back in the day? Yeah.
So that was, I think that was the first comic that he ever drew was Teen Titans.
I think that was one of the big breakout ones for him, at least. Yeah.
Because I think he started with Marvel actually doing let's find out.
I think he was doing She-Hulk for a little while. I'm not as familiar. I'm embarrassed to say I'm not as familiar with early George Perez work.
In issue number 141, he started on the Avengers.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So Creatures on the Loose, the Inhumans, Fantastic Four number 176. He did that one.
Okay.
The Korvac saga, which I have no idea what that is.
Some deep dive stuff.
I'm on his Wikipedia. So 1980, he was still drawing the Avengers, and then he also began working for DC and started the new Teen Titans.
Right, with the classic lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I have a story for you regarding Teen Titans.
Okay.
So, this was probably about 2016, 2017. I get a call from my mom, and so I was living in Utah at the time, and my family lives in Tennessee. She gave me a call at about 7:00 at night. Now, my mom, she works for St. Jude, and she gets up real early to go to work. And so her calling me at 9:00 was really weird. She never called me that late at night, usually, unless it was something massive. And so she gives me a call, and she asked me a question. She asked me, "Nick, are you familiar with George Perez?" And I kind of, I stuttered for a moment. I was like, "Yeah, I know who he is. How do you know who he is?" She grew up in Venezuela, moved to the United States, and after 25 years after she married my dad, how is she supposed to know who George Perez is? She doesn't know she doesn't know anything about comics.
Right.
And so yeah, of course I know who that is. And she was like, "Oh, that's really cool because he's staying in my house."
Okay.
Yeah. And this was, 2016, 2017, right as, we're getting to the peak of Marvel content, really.
Sure.
And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" She's like, "Yeah, he's sitting right here. He's, we're talking to him." And I was like, "Can I talk to him real quick?"
Wow.
And she's like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" And so I spent about 10 minutes talking to George Perez on the phone while he was staying at my mom's house. Wow. So I asked him this very directly. I was like, sir, can I ask you for a huge favor? He's like, yeah, sure, go for it, whatever, just
Yeah.
ask me. I was like, is it okay for you to draw and sign me a picture of Raven from the original The New Teen Titans?
Wow.
And he was like, oh yeah, totally. And so he's like, yeah, totally, I'll do that for you. Oh, by the way, here's your mom, she wants to talk to you. And so mom was like, what was that all about? And I asked him to draw him a character from his comics back in the 80s. And she's like, oh, that's very nice of him. 10 minutes later, not even, I get a text from my mom with a picture of Raven in Sharpie on a piece of paper, signed and dated by him.
That is cool. I was going to say, he's probably done with it by the time you finished asking him for it.
Oh, yeah.
He was prolific.
Here's the funny part about it, though. I haven't touched this thing at all. My parents mailed it to me, and they put it in a sheet protector, like a clear sheet protector.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't smudge or anything. Like, I haven't touched this thing in years. I haven't taken it out at all.
Awesome. That's
and
great.
So you can still see his pencil lines.
Mm-hmm.
So he did like a pencil sketch, and then just did everything else in Sharpie.
Yeah, there's something really mystifying about seeing that type of work in person, isn't there? Like seeing, I don't know if you've ever been to a convention where you can see the pages on display, like the original art. It's unbelievable to look at that in person. You can see whiteout, you can see pencils and eraser marks, all this stuff that obviously doesn't make it to the final page, or even just like what you have, like a personal sketch from somebody, and kind of seeing how they put it together. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Just because now it's second nature to them, not even.
Yeah.
It's like breathing for them at this point. They've drawn that character so many times that you can just bust one out on somebody's arm in 3 minutes.
Yeah, those guys are so competent too. Like that's one of those things, like, because the age that I was with comics, like artists, it was like the age of the superstar artists, right? Like Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, all those guys who kind of were basically superstars at the time. But you forget like what competent just draftsman a good comics artist is, like a guy like George Perez. Just like their ability to just sit down and just bang out like a beautiful piece of artwork by itself. Like it doesn't even have to be about comics. Like they just draw what they're looking at. And it's amazing, Oh
yeah, especially with the style of comics, how the comics changed over time, and how each individual artist changed as well.
Yeah, because every now and then there'd be a guy who comes along and they bring something new and completely change the business, right? Like that's what Jack Kirby was way back in the day. And you could argue, and I think I would agree, that George Perez is one of those guys.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's really, really interesting to me. You look at the New Teen Titans from Volume 1, November 1980. And then you look at George Perez in 1996 doing the New Teen Titans, or at least the 1990s Teen Titans comics. And the style between the two of them is wildly different.
Yeah, it'd be weird if it wasn't, right? Like if they stayed the same after all that time.
Oh, it's so good. Oh my gosh. George Perez is my hero.
That's cool. That's awesome.
And he was making, so much money off of the royalties on the Marvel movies.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because, he drew the early Avengers,
Yeah.
So of course he's going to be making so much money off of those.
And and that was at a time too when the artist wasn't as credited. It's a good thing he ended up getting it eventually. A lot of those older school guys, but they put the work in. Like they called it a bullpen back then, right? Like it was just a dusty old room where there's a bunch of people huddled over desks drawing. Like how amazing would it be to be in that room?
Oh my gosh, I would be stressed out. I'm not gonna lie. Just walking in between the desk, I would have been so stressed out if I'm gonna be 100%.
Yeah.
One wrong step and you've ruined, how much art in the matter of seconds.
Well, yeah, if you go crashing into their tables, sure.
Yeah. And I didn't know that he did a Nightwing story.
Yeah, didn't he? I don't know if he invented Nightwing, but he at least designed that costume that the first one that had kind of like the feather motif on it.
Whoa.
I think he did.
I'm trying to look because this is DC, but oh my gosh, he's so good. Just looking at this list of stuff that he did with DC, with Marvel, and then on the covers, he's done so much work.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably got a bigger body of work than 98% of the people in the history of comics, honestly. Like, he has such a long career, and he did so much work in that career.
Good for him for making royalties off the Marvel movies, though. Like,
Oh,
genuinely,
yeah,
good for him.
definitely.
He put so much work into the industry itself. I mean, okay, in your opinion, who is the greatest comic artist of all time?
Wow, what an almost impossible question.
I know. This is why I'm asking, because in my head, it is George Perez. The fact that he was
Okay.
able to come up with so many good characters, or at least
Mhm.
draw them well, even in the past, and then to come back and still draw them really well. That's,
Yeah.
and he was working for Marvel and DC at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like,
I
that's
mean,
just that's kind of that's some, I mean, I don't know how I want to say this for a family friendly podcast, but that's some big energy,
it's true. I mean,
Ugh.
he's definitely on a Mount Rushmore, I think, of comics artists. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of just pure impact on the industry and the business and the art form, I don't know that I could honestly say anybody other than Kirby, but he's very much in that
Okay.
same vein, of obviously being a ground zero for the creation of a lot of stuff that still stands today, and the amount of work he produced, and in working on for both of the big two, all that type of
Hmm.
stuff. There's very few people who did it as well as those two did it, and the impact is
Ooh.
absolutely massive.
Okay. No. Yeah. Now I know who you're talking about. Yeah. 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 Jack Kirby.
Yeah,
Yeah. With Captain America. Ooh.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know that I could accurately speak to how big a deal he was, but like, there's an early run of the Fantastic Four, which is generally objectively considered to be the that closest you can get to like perfect storytelling in comics format. Like, the amount of story they were able to pack into such a small amount of time, the sheer creativity, kind of energy to it, early Stan and Jack stuff, and
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and as time goes on, the more you realize, the more Jack did in all that creative process.
Hmm.
Like, it's just unbelievable.
Because he did, well, at least he did the cover art of the Fantastic Four with the Silver Surfer, number 72.
Yeah, he did the whole book.
Oh man. Okay, so he was doing work for both of them too at the same time.
Yeah, well, he started with I mean, he has a long career too, but he started with Marvel, and then it was kind of him and Stan were a team. Eventually they parted ways, and he went over to DC to just kind of do his own thing. He was writing and drawing for a little while. He did like the New Gods,
Yeah.
all these other kind of out there comics. Like, he just wanted to do his own thing, and he had enough of a name that they just let him do it. Um, and it's some wild stuff.
You've reached the peak of your career when you're that good, where people just like, oh, whatever. We'll just let him do what he
Yeah,
wants
what do
because
you want
it's.
to do? We'll publish it, whatever it is.
In my head, that kind of reminds me of Hideo Kojima.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's he's not even an artist anymore. He's an auteur. You know.
Yeah, he kind of got in his own head a little bit. I'm a big fan of the Metal Gear series and stuff like that. But after a while, I was like, okay, dude, like, you got to pump the brakes a little bit. I can't.
Yeah.
It's going a
And
little bit too
granted,
far.
auteur is, it's more film, but still, like, that's
Sure.
the level.
Well, yeah, because everybody can see that person's got like a vision, right? And it's a very kind
Yeah.
of pure vision on its own. And both of those are art forms that benefit from collaboration, but sometimes just one person's vision kind of just comes through, and it really just is. No matter who helps them with it, it just looks like their work.
Yeah.
Mike Mignola is one of those guys.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a name I have not heard in a minute.
He's great. I actually met him 2012 or so.
No.
Yeah. I've got all of the Hellboy collections, like the library collections, the big
Yeah,
bound
yeah.
cloth covered hardcovers. And I've got his signature on the second one. I'm not a big signature guy, but I was like, well, I've got to get Mike Mignola to sign. I went and bought a copy of the book. I didn't even have volume 1 yet. I bought volume 2 because they didn't have volume 1. I brought it over to him. I was like, hey, sign this, please. Please and thank you. Shook his hand. It was cool. He was a nice guy.
So here's my question for you.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Evil Inc. comics?
It rings a bell.
So, the reason why I bring this up
Okay.
is because in my head, this is the best way to do this. Like, if you want to become so much of just the most prolific artist you want to be, that you can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how you do this. So, are you familiar with the band Coheed and Cambria?
Yes.
Okay. Evil Inc. Is Claudio Sanchez is the lead singer. It's his record label, so he has Evil Inc. Records, but he
Mm-hmm.
also owns Evil Inc. Comics.
Okay, that does ring a bell. Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, he started writing the songs. I'm pretty sure that this is how it goes. That he started writing the songs and they followed a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, he wanted to write it was good enough that he wanted to write comics behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can listen to the music and then read the comics in order and know where you are because of the songs. Like
Oh,
what's
really?
happening. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's one of the best ways in my head to do it, or at least to do content that has both, because in my head, comics or anything that you can read that's drawn and
Mm-hmm.
music are the easiest consumable forms of media.
Yeah. Okay. I can see where you're coming at from that. Yeah.
And so, and they did it real well, because I'll tell you what, right now, those are the only comics that I own that are signed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So I have well, heck, hold on, give me 1 second. I'll go grab them real quick. So I have in my hand the Amory Wars, which is the storyline that he created. So I have the second stage Turbine Blade, the hardback full copy. It has how many? 350 page, 10 issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first one. And then I have all three paper covers that are signed of Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4 from Fear Through the Eyes of Madness. And then I also own the hardcover for In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3.
Wow. Nice.
So I spent, I think, $120 in one night on comics.
That's the dangerous thing about comics. It's very easy to spend way too much money very quickly.
Oh no, yeah. So when I first found physical copies of the Superior Spider-Man, I was getting ready to buy all of them, and then I saw the price tag, and I was like, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
I can't throw down this kind of money right now."
Yeah, I fell very quickly out of being a collector. Like I keep what I buy for the most part, at least for a while. But the way I tend to do it now is I buy most of my stuff digitally.
Oh yeah.
And then if I really like it, I'll buy the collected edition on physical format,
Right.
so that I have it on my shelf.
Yeah, I wanted to do that, so that's why I got like the big hardcover copies of what he has. But the reason why I got the paper copies that were signed was because I think that was the latest one that he released.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the hardcover yet.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, and if you have the opportunity to get them signed, you might as well, right?
Yeah. But yeah, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's super cool too, because I've listened to these albums for years, and then later I found out, oh, there's a comic behind it. So I remember my first time reading through the comics, and then I would get to a part and it mentioned a line or a lyric from the song, and I would start singing that song in my head while I'm reading, these comics.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
It's one of the weirdest experiences, because I've never had that before, where I start reading something and then a song that is related to the same thing comes in.
I don't know if they did it the same way, but a couple of the guys from My Chemical Romance, actually, they're the ones who created the Umbrella Academy, which is a whole TV show now, right?
Oh, yeah?
Umbrella Academy. Yeah, that was big. Oh, God, I don't even know when that book came out. I was only kind of aware of it. I wasn't really reading it very closely, but I'd seen it here and there and read a little bit of it. But yeah,
was it a book or was it a comic?
It was a comic, which was actually had a lot of a pretty big following. Dark Horse, I want to say, is the publisher.
Yep, it totally is.
Yeah, and but I was kind of aware of, it's like, oh yeah, these are There's actually musicians who are at least writing this. I think one of them is the artist on it too. I'm not sure.
Conceived and written by Gerard Way, who is the lead singer, of
Yeah.
My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, so I mean, and that book's actually really stellar, the way it's written. The bits of it that I've actually sat down and read. So there is something to be said for musicians being able to carry over and do that format.
Yeah, and I think one of the coolest things is that I think he actually finished this story, the Armory Wars story,
Mm-hmm.
and then he started on another one. So he's doing a brand new story outside of this universe.
Oh, cool. So just kind of beyond the albums themselves, he's just carrying it through with the comics.
Yeah, so he started on another storyline, and
Nice.
I actually have when they released that album, because he released an album with a book.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I actually bought the collector's edition, so I have like the book and all the CDs that came with that story and with that music.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I tell you, there's nothing quite like it. There's nothing quite like what Coheed and Cambria has done in terms of just mixing those two mediums so well. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to do that right. I think it's very, like, if you've got the ability to strike that balance, that is pretty rare, but that's cool.
Yeah, I also know that there's a band called Starset. They released a book as well.
Okay.
I haven't read the book yet. I have it downstairs. I bought it when I went and saw them live. And I think Mastodon also has a storyline.
Oh, cool.
Or at least their albums do, I think. I do one thing I do know about Mastodon is that their album Ghost of Corelia, I know that album follows a story. I just don't know if the rest of the albums are connected to that one album.
Oh, right. Yeah, like whether or not it's all one big kind of rock opera type thing.
Yeah, because that's what... So Coheed released 7 albums around the same story.
Wow.
Yeah, so they did 2 prequel albums, which are Afterman Ascension and Afterman Descension. Those were the prequels to the story. And then I think they did 5 albums about the story of the Amory Wars.
Nice.
So, and it's so interesting to see how... Oh, see, this is what blows my mind, is that so they technically wrote the prequel album, so Afterman Ascension and Descension. They wrote those after the other albums had come out.
Right, okay.
So it was just really interesting. No, yeah, it's crazy. It's how many hours, how many songs do I have on my music playlist that's just Coheed and Cambria? Yeah, it's super, super cool. You definitely have to check that out, because they're one of my favorite bands in the whole world. I think I've seen them live the most out of any other band.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend them.
Yeah, what I've heard of them, I've liked pretty well. So I'll have to give that a shot and read into that a little bit more.
Oh, he also started a coffee line too, based off
just all over the place.
Yeah. This man is a genius. He's great. He's doing a cruise.
Really?
Like a tour cruise.
Okay.
So it's going to be a music festival on a cruise created by Coheed and Cambria.
That would be an intense cruise. I would like to be there for that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. The problem is the cost of tickets.
Well, yeah. I mean, a normal cruise is too expensive as is.
Yeah. And then you put in, 20 bands all together on a cruise.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Someday.
Oh yeah. Someday I can host my own,
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you've made it as an artist, when you can have your own cruise.
Yeah, that's a specific benchmark that I think you could shoot for. But
that, or becoming like, Jack Kirby or Hideo Kojima and just make whatever you wanted.
Exactly. Yeah, I would just have people just let you do whatever you want, and I'd say that's an accomplishment for sure.
Did you play Death Stranding?
I did not. I saw it and I was like, you know what? In another life, if I had more time, I'd probably dip my toe in on that. But that's a bit left field for me right now at this point in my life.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just the story that he created behind it is absolutely wild.
A good friend of mine is fully obsessed with it. So I do hear about it a lot, but I haven't dipped in myself on it yet.
Yeah, my wife bought me the collector's edition.
Mm-hmm.
So it came with a copy of the soundtrack, a couple behind the scenes, and then the game itself
Yeah.
with some bonus content.
Nice.
This is before we were even married. She bought that for me as just a Christmas present when we were dating.
Nice. Well,
I was like, yeah, man, this is how I know I picked the right one.
Exactly.
She understands me.
She's at the hook.
Yeah, hook, line, and sinker, man. We just had our 1-year wedding anniversary on Saturday.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, I made a post on it on Instagram and I said, okay, I don't know how, but the math checks out. 1 year of marriage in a quarantine time warp equals 5 years of a normal marriage.
That's probably true. That's a good test right up front there. Maybe not a test you would have asked for, but yeah.
So if you can last a quarantine, 1 year marriage, I think you're going to be good for the rest of it.
I mean, a lot of marriages didn't, that was a big thing during the past year. Did
you suddenly find you had more time or less time during quarantine?
Wow, what a question. I guess technically more, although I couldn't tell you what happened with it. I mean, I'm in a shoebox of an apartment with my wife, 2 children, and a 70-pound dog. So,
whoa,
yeah. So, quarantine has been an experience. Tomorrow's March 16th. It's a full year as of tomorrow that we've been in lockdown.
Yeah, ours was actually the day we got married. That was when everything started shutting down.
Lucky you.
Yeah. No, yeah. Jeez. We dodged a bullet.
Yeah, well, you know what? Yeah, you got it in, and that's important because we had some friends who got married in October, and they had to really pare down what they wanted to do. It was basically a private ceremony. My cousin was supposed to get married this coming June. They flat out canceled their wedding. It sucks. There's a lot of that going around.
Well, no. So here's the crazy thing. So I'm LDS, right? Mm-hmm. So I subscribe to the religion. I do the whole, LDS thing. So we were actually supposed to get married in one of the temples in Oregon on the 21st. We got a call on the 13th saying that they had shut down the temples.
Oh, jeez.
And so we called my bishop, and he was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, there's this option now that's available. You don't have to get married in the temple, but you can get civilly married first. So just go to the court and get a marriage license."
Yeah.
Because normally they do that whole thing in the temples.
Sure.
So, so we called my bishop, we called our parents, and she called her job. And within 2 hours of us getting that call, we were married.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's...
with no parents around. Her parents were living in Oregon. Mine were in Tennessee. We got 2 random friends that were available to serve as witnesses, and we got married.
Yeah, just get it done. It's a good thing you did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was wild.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So, nice. But the funny part is that we can tell everybody that we got married on Friday the 13th in the middle of a global pandemic on a day that had 4 seasons in it.
Wow, there you go. Yeah, that's a...
Yeah,
you won't forget the date.
Because it went from about 60 degrees and raining to 70 degrees and fully sunny to 40 degrees and raining and then to snowing.
Jeez. This was in Oregon?
No, this was in Utah.
Oh, in Utah. Right. Yeah. Man.
So...
I didn't think that was possible in Utah.
Oh, neither did I. I mean, I'd seen it go from, perfectly sunny to snowing before. I'd seen that, but nothing like that. It was crazy.
Jeez.
Hey there, everybody. I just want to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, Gamerware. Now, Gamerware is a gamer clothing and accessory brand focused on the gaming industry, obviously, if you couldn't tell from the name. However, their products are eco-friendly and are really high quality. They focus on eco-conscious clothing, collaboration, and innovation within the clothing industry. They have some really, really amazing stuff. I highly recommend checking out their Explorer t-shirt. I really love that one. But any of their t-shirts, Cybershark, Ambush, Blaze, Robopunk, Samurai, Sensei Ape, all their t-shirts look super good. And if you're looking to elevate your gaming look, you have to check out their custom 2021 jerseys for gamers. You can customize them however you want with your gamer tag, and they just look really clean and they're really high quality. So if you'd like to check out Gamerware today, go to their website at gamerware.com. That's GAMERWEAR.com and use code TCT10 to save 10% off. That's TCT10 at checkout to save 10% off your entire purchase. And now, back to the episode. Okay, so now for the most exciting part of this story.
Okay.
So, I currently have in my hand about 12 decks. Okay?
Okay.
So, your options are Ultimate Interview, Icebreakers, The Hustle, How Dare You, Philosophy, WTF, True Crime, ball game, so basketball, baseball, travel, hypothetical questions, would you rather, oh, here we go, superheroes. How about that? That seems like a decent one.
Sure, let's stick with the theme.
Seems on topic. Okay, now I'm randomly flipping through to pick a card. 3, 2, 1, look. Oh, come on. All right. So, the question presented to us is, who is the most underrated superhero?
Okay, interesting. Let's see if we can find an angle for this. Okay, give me your answer first.
My answer is Thor.
Okay.
Because, and I mentioned this with Mandy too, because of Rune King Thor.
Whoa, okay.
That is my genuine opinion.
So what makes him underrated though?
Because okay, so yes, he's part of the Avengers, right? But I think with Endgame, or with Infinity War and with Endgame, they finally got to see where Thor was starting to become a little OP, right? With him getting the axe and him unlocking his real Storm God powers, right? Nobody's heard of Rune King Thor. Outside of people who actually enjoy the comics and actually do deep dives into characters, nobody knows who Rune King Thor is. And that is by far, in my opinion, Rune King Thor is one of the greatest multiverse characters ever. Just the arc that he goes through to get that kind of power is absolutely wild. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Thor, so it's it's hard to not come off on a tangent. But yeah, I mean, that's a good call for sure. I mean, I'm a big defender of the way that they handled that character in the movies, because, like, I don't know if you remember pre-MCU comic book movies, there was such a huge chance that they were going to do that character wrong, right? They were going to try to explain it in some way that made it very pedestrian, or they were going to, it was very easy to go too far in one direction. And based on the Batman movies and the Spider-Man movies before it, it was very easy for them to downplay it and have it be, because it's very silly, not silly, but very out there concept. And the first movie, like, people are kind of down on it now, but how perfect was the tone that they struck with that first movie? Like, like they could have gone the direction of Rune King Thor with that first movie, because it fit, right? You could see it fitting. They had that slightly elevated kind of Shakespearean tone. It was fantasy, but it was science fiction, but it was still superheroes. Like, unbelievable. But
so here's the thing. I actually thought that they were going to go in the direction of Rune King Thor because of what happened in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
What happened in that made you think that?
Because of so they had brought in the Collector, right?
Yeah.
And then I can't remember his name, but his father, the planet.
Oh, Ego. Yep.
Ego. Yeah. For some reason, they kept getting into more and more, not necessarily overpowered, but just crazy fantastical beings.
Yeah, the cosmic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought that they were going to bring in Rune King Thor because I thought they were going to talk about those who sit above in shadow.
Mm.
You know, that tier of where the Asgardians were on a level, but then they had a set of gods that they worshipped as well.
Yeah, and I think they got as close as they could, honestly. I mean, who knows what the
Yeah.
next movie is going to do, but they did kind of ramp him up slowly because I mean, they started off pretty understandable, like, because by the first Avengers movie, he's on par with a lot of the other characters, which if you read the comics, you're like, well, that doesn't really track, but I can see why they made that choice. You know, I can see why they did it. They don't, otherwise the battle in New York is 3 seconds long and the movie's worse for it. So I can see why they did that. But then they get the excuse in the last few movies to, like you said, to really ramp him up. And if you follow it on that curve, you could definitely see where they could end up with Rune King Thor, which would be interesting. It would definitely be a choice. Obviously, it's not the choice they went with. But again, who knows what they'll do? He's still got one more movie.
So actually, my friend made a good point, though, because I have a friend who grew up on DC.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up with Justice League and The Flash and all those characters.
Mm-hmm.
He was of the opinion that Rune King Thor was too dark for movies and that it wouldn't have done well at all.
I don't know. Maybe for the MCU because they tend to strike a lighter tone in general.
Right.
But like it would yeah, I don't know about that, but maybe for the specific like series that Thor's obviously in, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So this is one of the last questions that I want to ask you, just because I'm purely curious to see what other people who like comics are thinking.
Okay.
So before the end of, you know, the current arc where there was Infinity War and Endgame,
Mm-hmm.
I was convinced that they were going to go in the direction of the Infinity Gauntlet, the comic.
Okay.
That was the one with Perez and Ron Lim.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Starlin. He was the one who wrote that series.
Yeah.
I was convinced that was how they were going to go because of Captain Marvel. And I think because they had hinted at Adam Warlock at the end of one of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So I was purely convinced that they were going to go the route that Infinity Gauntlet went. I thought they were going to introduce Deadpool, Adam Warlock. I thought that, you know, Death was going to become a whole thing. You know, Lady Death. What direction were you thinking they were going to go? Did you see it coming out this way, the way that it did?
Not exactly the way that they did. I didn't anticipate the 5-year time skip. I didn't anticipate besides what I had heard about with like production, you know, news and things like that, which I try to avoid. I didn't think too much of. I didn't expect a time heist.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
But you could see where they were pulling elements to build up to it, like with Nebula, for example, who plays a big part in the comic version of the story as well. So you could see where they were building up to it, and they kind of gave it little nods here and there. But I can definitely see why they didn't take it shot for shot the same way they did with the Infinity Gauntlet, because like introducing Death as a character right after you had the movie with Hela, who was also somehow Death, right? Or I thought when Ragnarok was coming out, I thought maybe that she would be the version of Death that Thanos falls in love with or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But God, it's so hard to think back to the before times and imagine what my expectations were for that. Yeah, I don't know. I did not expect Infinity, or what was the first one? Infinity War to end with Thanos winning. That was such a ballsy move. I didn't think they had it in them. You know?
See, I didn't think they were going to do that either. I genuinely see. That's why I was convinced that they were going to go with the route of the Infinity Gauntlet, because, you know, eventually Death, she was behind everything, really.
Yeah.
But, you know, Thanos eventually loses and Adam Warlock gets the gauntlet.
Yeah, I think that they improved Thanos in a couple ways for the movies, because in the comic he was very kind of vain. He was very like his motivations were purely like, well, I'm going to impress Death. Watch what I can do, and that's fine. And he obviously makes a really good villain, but I think that his motivation is I mean, you can still poke holes in it if you want to from the movies, but I think it's more interesting the way they ended up doing it. They took
him
enough
being in love
from,
with death.
yeah, they took enough from the source material that it was still the same character, but they didn't feel the need to shoehorn stuff in there that didn't need to be there, you know.
I don't know. So here's the other part. When you saw Infinity War as the first part of that, did you immediately think that it was going to be something like the comics, or from the progression that it was taking, was it going to be something completely different?
Based on the previous 17 movies leading up to that point, I think that by then, knowing enough about the source material that they're pulling from, you can kind of get a sense, like they're taking from it, but they're not doing it exactly. Civil War is a perfect example, right? Like they did the Civil War story and it follows the basic beats, but it's nothing like it is in the comics when you get into the detail. So I think I was expecting something very similar because the directors were the same, and obviously they had a huge cast to manage, and that's very difficult. It's very different to try to tell that story in a comic versus on film. So
oh yeah, because now that I think about it, if they would have gone with the comic version of Infinity War, they would have had to bring in, you know, Wolverine and She-Hulk and
Spider-Man, and there's
Fantastic Four,
so there's a lot they couldn't do, obviously, because they only had a limited set of characters, but also like even characters they could use that just weren't there, like Moondragon was in the comics, stuff like that, things they never even got around to, you know. So you knew that they weren't going to be able to do it exactly the same way, but they took the right pieces, I think, and it's definitely not a perfect movie, but I think that they did as well as could be expected with the pieces they had, you know.
Right. Yeah, because now that I'm looking at the Infinity War, like the main character list, the Avengers, Avengers West Coast, Fantastic Four, X-Men, X-Factor, New Warriors, Alpha Fight, Infinity Watch, Thanos, Doctor Doom, Kang, Adam Warlock, Galactus, and Eternity.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot in there that just hasn't made it into the movies yet for whatever reason, and to try to introduce all that, and because I had read that they were going to do a whole side story kind of showing the origins of the Black Order, right? They were going to try to introduce all those characters because they're just basically just henchmen in Infinity War. But they ended up cutting the whole thing because it was like it just bloats the whole story too much, and I don't think it suffers for cutting that. Like you don't need to know who Proxima Midnight is, you just need to know she's a badass and she's being told to do a thing, and like
and she can do it,
and she can do it, right? And she stabs Vision in the chest. So I think that considering the jujitsu they had to do with interweaving that many stories, I wouldn't have expected more, you know.
But man, those because now that I'm thinking about it, now that I'm actually remembering the movies, because I haven't seen the movies in so long, it feels like Infinity War is such a good movie. It's really, really good.
Of the two, I like it a little bit better.
I'm of the same mind. Yeah, I like Infinity War a lot more than I like Endgame.
Yeah.
Oh man. So what are you most excited for in terms of what Marvel's coming out with?
For the films?
Yeah. Genuinely, and you can't say Love and Thunder.
I can't say Love and Thunder? Okay.
No, because you have a bias towards Thor.
I do. Okay. So I'm very interested in what they're doing with Ant-Man 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they cast I don't remember the actor's name, but they cast Kang, who is the second best supervillain in comics history. So I'm very interested to see what they'll do with Kang the Conqueror.
Really? They put Kang in here?
Yeah, Kang's going to be in. Plus, it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is a bonkers title. So I'm already expecting a lot from it. The Ant-Man movies are underrated. I think a little bit of camp in these movies. That's what a lot of other comic book movies are missing, right? Like the Marvel movies remain fun, and it's the campiness is a big part of why, right? Not like Spider-Man 3 levels of campiness, but but yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the next Doctor Strange movie, just because I don't know if you followed WandaVision, but
dude, okay, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. That is what I'm most excited for.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can see that, because the first one I was like, that was fine. Like, I liked the first Doctor Strange movie. It's never been a big character for me, but I think they did a good job of introducing a whole new corner of the mythos.
If I'd never found out about Rune King Thor, I definitely would have said Doctor Strange is an underrated superhero.
Yeah, I would probably refer you to mid 2000s Brian Michael Bendis New Avengers as something to read then, if you're a fan of Doctor Strange. Are you familiar with that run at all?
No, I'm definitely not. So.
Okay, so about the time I started to get back into comics when I was in college, do you know Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis?
Yeah.
As a writer, yeah. So he did a story called Avengers Disassembled, which was basically very much related to WandaVision. She kind of remembers that she had these kids in this false universe. She goes a little crazy, and she kind of starts undoing reality. Stuff starts just going wild, and it destroys the Avengers. So out of that, all these sort of B characters come in, and it's a book called The New Avengers. It's led by Luke Cage.
Interesting.
Like Spider-Woman's a big part of it. Iron Fist, like all these characters that Bendis really wanted to write. Apparently, he just brought them to the forefront. And for a good 20-issue run in the middle of it, Doctor Strange was a big part of it. So if you're a fan of him, that's one of my favorite runs of that character.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see, because I'm fully expecting kind of like a horror Marvel movie.
It definitely seems that way. I'm interested in not only the characters that are rumored to be involved with that, but I'm interested to see what other stuff they're going to start to bring in, because that Multiverse of Madness is what a title. Like, how perfect. And Sam Raimi, speaking of camp, like Spider-Man movies and everything, he's directing it. So
yeah, that's why I'm expecting a horror movie.
Yeah, that's true. He's a horror guy. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm equally curious about it, and I want to learn about what it's going to entail, but I also don't want to spoil anything, and I just want to go into it fresh,
Yeah, because my thing is that I don't know who Xochitl Gomez is going to play. I don't know how she's going to tie into this, and that's where I'm confused.
I'm not familiar with her.
And that's the thing. She's a child actor.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So like, I just looked her up on IMDb, and she was in a Netflix series, but other than that, she's supposed to be making a screen debut on Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. And there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing on it.
Who knows, right? Like, it could be literally anything with a title like that. So it's hard to say.
Oh man, Doctor Strange. Now I want to go and watch all these movies again.
Yeah, me and my wife have a tradition. Every time one of the big crossover movies comes out, we do a marathon of the whole series up to that point.
Oh gosh.
But we do it like one movie a week. We have to start way in advance because we don't have the time to sit down and watch like multiple movies in a row. So like, the last time we timed it out, when Endgame was coming out, it was November of the year before. And we're like, we got to start now. we have to put on Iron Man tonight if we're going to stay on schedule.
Crazy. No, because my wife and I did that. We did a chronological. We did a chronological watching of the Marvel movies, not how they came out, but how the story progresses from Captain America to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's crazy. It was crazy watching that.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I think that's how we'll do it next time we do it.
It's such an interesting way to watch it rather than how they came out.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, I'm so glad I finally got to talk to comics about somebody. I've been wanting to talk about this for so much, just because nobody knows who Rune King Thor is. And I'm glad you finally know who it was.
You got to get that stuff out sometimes. You can't just bottle up the comic stuff,
And see, it's not even just talking about it, because I've talked about it to multiple people, and they're like, oh, I have no idea who that is. But it's just finally now somebody who's just like, oh, I agree with you.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. It's one thing to just go on a rant about it, but my wife's tired of hearing me talk about Iron Fist. So
no, I get that. Trust me. So, parting shot. Who's the best Thor?
Who's the best Thor?
Yeah, of all the versions of Thor, who's the best Thor?
Can I say Frog Thor? No, actually,
right. Yeah,
no,
okay,
that's a joke.
no.
That's a joke. But I will say, without joking, that it's Beta Ray Bill.
Beta Ray Bill is super good.
Hell yeah.
Only because I like him in the Rune King Thor saga. I like his story in Rune King Thor.
So speaking, I know we're finishing up, but speaking of issues that we own that are very special, the one issue I've ever overspent on is I have Beta Ray Bill's first appearance hanging on my wall.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm very happy about it.
Okay, did you pay 3 figures or 4?
No, 2.
Really?
Yeah. I was given a sizable gift card as a birthday gift, so I just waltzed into a comic shop, and I figured I'd get like a big like omnibus collection or something like that, just to have on my shelf. But just for fun, I decided to flip through like the shop I was in had a room off to the side of like special edition, like first appearances, first issues, stuff like that, bagged and boarded or up on the wall in frames. And I was flipping through and I was just kind of trying to think to myself, like, if I was going to spend this kind of money on one comic, because again, I'm not really a collector, but I like to have stuff that's significant to me. I was like, what would I do? I would either get New Mutants #1 or I would get Beta Ray Bill's first appearance. And I didn't see either. So I went over and asked somebody, I said, hey, just out of curiosity, do you have that? And he was like, actually, it came in yesterday. We haven't finished pricing it, but give me a second. And he brought it out. He's like, $80. All right, well, here you go.
Please tell me that is exactly how much money was on that gift card.
No, I had $50, but I happily paid $30 out of pocket for it.
It's like, definitely, I'll pay $30 for anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I was very happy with it. It's in excellent condition, and I bought a comic size frame, and I have it up on my wall next to my desk. So.
Yeah, I definitely need to frame up this picture that George drew for me.
Yeah, you should, absolutely.
After 5 years of not doing that.
Yeah, just get one of those sunlight resistant glasses so it doesn't get faded.
Good idea. I will do that.
Yeah, because Sharpie will fade,
Yeah. Anyway, no, this was fantastic. Oh my gosh, I feel so vindicated now. So, Mr. Jamieson, sir, please. If anybody wants to follow you around and learn a lot about who you are, where can they find you?
So the best bet is probably so as a self-publisher of comics, I have a Twitter and Instagram handle of Bad Neighbor CMX, which is probably the best place to follow me. I kind of expanding that just to talk about my own projects in general, but mostly comics and art and comic art centric at this point.
And just so everybody knows, this man is also on the Dungeons and Randomness Podcast, which you should go and listen to because that's also a lot of fun.
That's true. You should listen to that. It has been fun. Our latest episode was just today, actually. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Cave being Cyclops is kind of entertaining for me.
Chaos Cyclops, yeah.
Isn't he chaos anyway? I feel like Cyclops
that's true.
Is just chaotic in general.
That's true. He tries really hard not to be, but he is. And so,
I
guess there is some. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And guys, come in.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode.
Just remember to get some sunlight and get a little bit of water.
A lot of fun
because
with
you have to remember that you're basically
Thor,
a houseplant with complicated
and knowing
emotions.
that somebody else out there loves Thor. If you like this episode, please give it a like, give it a follow, subscribe wherever you might listen to. Check us out on our socials, and also go check out the Dungeons and Randomness Podcast. We are finally over the hill, and we are starting our way down to our good man, Jason, who is the Dungeon Master of the Dungeons and Randomness Podcast. So hopefully you're excited for that. We also have Alex Herrera on the lineup. So stay tuned for that next week, and we'll definitely see you on the next one.